Let's switch gears now a little bit and talk about the cornea and glaucoma. We showed this slide previously and we looked at the relationship between the hysteresis measurement and the central corneal thickness measurement, and we said, well, there is a relationship there, but it's not a very strong relationship, and what that's telling us is that the thickness of the cornea does not entirely describe the cornea's biomechanical properties. In fact, if you look at a pathological population, keep in mind this previous slide here we had a normal population, you'll find out that not only is the relationship weak, it's also nonlinear. In this population, this is a glaucoma population, and we have a number of edematous corneas in this population. You see that the hysteresis correlates with the corneal thickness to an extent, but then when you get into these very thick corneas that are edematous, the relationship turns around and goes the other way. So the important point here to hit on again is that the hysteresis measurement is a more thorough description of these biomechanical properties of the cornea than corneal thickness. In fact, this is why this is very important, because currently it has become popular in many areas of the world and in many groups in ophthalmology and optometry to try to calculate the true IOP using corneal thickness pachymetry correction algorithms. Technically, this cannot be done. Central corneal thickness based IOP adjustment algorithms simply do not work. These formulas have been scientifically discredited at this point, and the glaucoma opinion leaders of the world are cautioning clinicians against using them. CCT-based correction algorithms that come out on little conversion cards, and all of the instruments, tonometers and pachymeters, that have built-in IOP adjustment algorithms really are obsolete at this point. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail, but this statement is from a consensus book on intraocular pressure. This book was put together by the World Glaucoma Association, that is made up of glaucoma opinion leaders from over 70 different glaucoma associations around the world. In 2007, they had a consensus meeting where they got together for a very, very long 10 or 12-hour day and discussed the measurement and the use of intraocular pressure data in glaucoma for the entire day, came out of it with meeting minutes and wrote a book about it. And one of the statements in that book is, correction nomograms that adjust Goldman-obtained IOP based solely on central corneal thickness are neither valid nor useful in individual patients. This is important information, and it might be shocking news to some of your customers, some of the people in the field that are using these corneal thickness adjustment algorithms, because they've been told that corneal thickness can help them obtain a true intraocular pressure measurement over the past 5 to 10 years. Unfortunately, it's not a valid statement. Why is that? Ocular hypertension treatment study and other studies have found, yes, there is a relationship between the thickness of the cornea and the Goldman-obtained IOP measurement. That is to say, thicker corneas tend to measure higher on Goldman, and thinner corneas tend to measure lower. But this relationship is only true on average, and it only describes the average behavior of population data. When you try to apply, based on a mathematical formula, this relationship to individual measurements of people's eyes, the relationship is too weak. You literally don't know which direction to adjust the pressure. In fact, using corneal thickness adjustment algorithms gives a physician the opportunity to adjust the pressure in the wrong direction 40% of the time. So not only do these corneal thickness adjustment algorithms not work scientifically and mathematically, I believe they're dangerous, because almost half the time you could be getting an answer that's in the wrong direction. It's doing a disservice to the patient. Let's look. It's really actually easy to understand why. Here's a chart of the Goldman measured IOP and the central corneal thickness. And as we can see, there's one outlier person here that has a very thick cornea, a very thin cornea of 450 microns. And that cornea, that eye, measures very low on Goldman tonometry. And then we've got another person in this population that's got a very thick cornea, and as you can see, that person's eyes measure significantly higher on the Goldman tonometer. But look at the mess in the middle. Look at the scatter in this data. That's what makes it mathematically impossible to adjust the Goldman obtained intraocular pressure. What's been done in previous studies that have looked at this is they said, okay, here's a normal population. Here's our range of corneal thicknesses from 650 down to 450, and here's the Goldman values that we obtained from these patients. Let's draw a line that best fits the average behavior of this population and develop a formula based on the slope of that line to adjust the Goldman obtained pressure up or down by however many millimeters of mercury the formula states. The problem is, as we pointed out on the previous slide, due to the scatter in this data, you could adjust the pressure in the wrong direction 40% of the time because the formula only describes this line. And this line only describes the data points in this population that literally fall on this line. That formula does not apply to this eye up here or this eye down here. In fact, here's two eyes, both 600 microns, and one's way on this side of the line and the other's way on this side of the line. You literally don't know which direction to adjust the pressure. So that's over and done with. Central corneal thickness adjustment nomograms do not work. Basically, the reason is because the thickness of the cornea is not a surrogate for its resistance characteristics. And corneal resistance to bending is really what affects a tonometer. A tonometer at the end of the day is just a force gauge, and it's trying to measure the force required to flatten this surface. So I like to encourage people to say, thick and thin is wrong. Think weak and strong. But what is important about the cornea in glaucoma? If we're telling you now not to use the corneal thickness to adjust the pressure, why is there so much buzz about the cornea in glaucoma? That's because a number of these studies, including the ocular hypertension treatment study, which is referenced frequently because it was a 5-year, 5,000 patient, $35 million study. It was a very important study that found, among other things, that the thickness of the cornea is an independent risk factor for progression in glaucoma. So it did not say to use the corneal thickness to adjust the pressure. What it said is that the thickness of the cornea itself is giving us information about a patient's susceptibility to developing or progressing in glaucoma. Why is this? We believe because the thickness of the cornea itself is giving us a window. It's letting us look a little bit into the material characteristics of the cornea. And perhaps this thinner cornea represents a thinner corneoscleral shell and a thinner, perhaps weaker, lamina cribrosa that's more susceptible to sustaining glaucomatous damage. The hysteresis measurement is a better overall representation of these biomechanical properties, and as such is a better tool to use than just the thickness itself in determining glaucoma risk. If you look at a couple populations again here, what you'll see is that the normal population, as we described before, has a hysteresis measurement that ranges from about 8 to 14 with an average somewhere around 10.5, 11. When you look at the primary open-angle glaucoma patients in this population, you'll see that there's a very, very wide range of hysteresis measurements, but on average it's a little bit lower than the normals. If you look at the normal tension glaucoma patients, and these are the patients who have low values on Goldman tonometry, but often progressing glaucoma very rapidly, you'll see that their hysteresis measurement is even lower than their primary open-angle glaucoma counterparts. It's indeed a very skewed population. So this is a little bit of evidence to show us that independent of pressure, independent of other known risk factors for glaucoma, the hysteresis measurement is able to differentiate different classes of glaucomatous eyes.